My mother was Jewish. She didn't need to love me that way. She loved me in the Jewish way.
Harrison Ford is the face of two of the biggest franchises in film history, Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Yet almost no one connects that all-American image with Jewish heritage. His mother, Dorothy Neidleman, was the daughter of Jewish immigrants from Minsk, while his father came from an Irish and German Catholic background. Because Jewish identity traditionally passes through the mother's line, Harrison Ford is regarded as fully Jewish under Jewish law. He was raised in a secular home and tends to treat the subject with humor. Asked once about his religion, he joked that he was raised Democrat. On another occasion, he summed himself up neatly. As a man, I've always felt Irish. As an actor, I've always felt Jewish. When a famous holiday song undercounted him as a quarter Jewish, he reportedly set the record straight by insisting half. Paul Newman, with his famous blue eyes and effortless cool in classics like Cool Hand Luke and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, rarely registers in the public mind as Jewish. His father came from a Hungarian and Polish Jewish family, while his mother was raised Catholic. Newman embraced his father's heritage in his own understated way, once explaining that he identified as Jewish because it's more of a challenge. In his memoir, published after his passing, he wrote that he had refused to hide or change his name, choosing instead to keep it as a kind of badge. He had faced real prejudice growing up in Ohio, and he later played the heroic lead in Exodus, a landmark film about the founding of Israel. For a man so often cast as the all-American hero, it was a quietly defiant choice. Marilyn Monroe is perhaps the most enduring screen icon of all time, and almost no one associates her with Judaism. Yet she formally converted on July 16th, 1956, just before her marriage to the playwright Arthur Miller, in a ceremony led by Reform Rabbi Robert Goldberg in Connecticut. What makes this story striking is that Miller, a secular man, never asked her to do it. She pursued the conversion herself, studying Jewish texts and reciting a vow from the Book of Ruth. She kept a mezuzah on her door and owned a small menorah that played the Israeli anthem. Even after the marriage ended, she considered herself Jewish, once telling a friend that she identified with the Jewish people because the world always seemed to be against them, much as it often felt against her. Edward G. Robinson defined the Hollywood gangster in classics like Little Caesar and Key Largo, all snarl and swagger. The real man could hardly have been more different. He was born Emanuel Goldenberg in Bucharest into a Yiddish-speaking Romanian Jewish family that came to New York in 1903. He had his bar mitzvah on the Lower East Side, spoke several languages, and got his start in the Yiddish theater. When advised to change his name for the stage, he deliberately kept the letter G to preserve Goldenberg. Far from the tough characters he played, he was a cultured art collector and an early, outspoken opponent of fascism, donating generously to relief efforts. He once captured his immigrant pride perfectly. "My mother may have given birth in Romania, but I was born the day I set foot on American soil." Lauren Bacall was the picture of cool Hollywood glamour beside Humphrey Bogart in films like The Big Sleep, and the studios marketed her as an American aristocrat. In truth, she was born Betty Joan Persky in New York, the daughter of Jewish immigrants from Poland and Romania. Early in her career, she kept her background quiet, even from a famously prejudiced director she worked under. The most surprising twist is her family tree. Bacall was a cousin of Shimon Peres, the future president and prime minister of Israel, whose birth name was Shimon Persky, and whose family came from the same roots as hers. The two only met as adults, long after both had become famous in their very different worlds. Bacall wrote that she always felt completely Jewish, and always would. For decades, Michael Landon embodied wholesome American family values, first as Little Joe in Bonanza, then as the gentle father Charles Ingalls in Little House on the Prairie, and later as an actual angel in Highway to Heaven. Few of his fans knew he was born Eugene Maurice Orowitz to a Jewish father and had his bar mitzvah at a synagogue in New Jersey. As a teenager, he faced real prejudice in his hometown over his heritage. He chose the surname Landon from a phone book after an agent told him his birth name sounded too Jewish for the screen. Given his almost saintly public image, the contrast is remarkable. He even slipped his heritage into his work, writing a beloved Little House episode about a kindly elderly Jewish craftsman who sprinkles Yiddish into his speech. Peter Sellers, the brilliant British comic of the Pink Panther films and Dr. Strangelove, is so tied to his quintessentially English image that his heritage rarely comes up. He was born Richard Henry Sellers to a Protestant father and a Jewish mother named Peg, whose family had deep Jewish roots, reaching back, by some accounts, to a famous 18th century English boxer. Under the tradition of maternal descent, Sellers was Jewish, something he became sharply aware of at his Catholic school, where he was singled out for it. He spent much of his life religiously restless, exploring different faiths. After he passed in 1980, his old comedy partner Spike Milligan publicly objected that the funeral had ignored his Jewish background, insisting that because his mother was Jewish, Sellers most certainly was too. Daniel Day-Lewis is regarded by many as one of the greatest screen actors ever, with celebrated performances in My Left Foot, There Will Be Blood, and Lincoln. His grand Anglo-Irish name and his roles as distinctly non-Jewish characters mean his heritage is rarely noticed. His father was the British poet laureate Cecil Day-Lewis, while his mother was the actress Jill Balkin, who came from a Jewish family that had emigrated to England from Latvia and Poland. Her father was the legendary film producer Sir Michael Balkin, head of the famous Ealing Studios. By maternal descent, Daniel Day-Lewis is Jewish. He has spoken about being bullied at his South London school for being both Jewish and what classmates saw as posh, and he later credited learning to mask his accent there as his very first convincing performance. Robert Downey Jr., forever identified as Iron Man and an Academy Award winner for Oppenheimer, surprises many fans with his Jewish background. His father, the underground filmmaker Robert Downey Sr., came from a family of Lithuanian and Hungarian Jewish descent and had changed the family surname from Elias. Downey himself describes his beliefs as a blend, calling himself a Jewbu, meaning Jewish Buddhist. He once told an interviewer that this mix was central to how he saw the world, even crediting different traditions with helping him through his hardest years. He married producer Susan Levin in a Jewish ceremony and has been seen wearing a chai pendant, a Hebrew symbol of life. His very Anglo screen name is a big reason most fans never make the connection. Winona Ryder defined a certain kind of 90s cool in films like Beetlejuice, Heathers, and Little Women, and later found a new generation of fans through Stranger Things. She was born Winona Laura Horowitz into a Jewish family whose relatives had emigrated from Russia, Romania, and Ukraine, with a surname that had once been Tomchin. Part of her family history includes loved ones lost during the Holocaust, a weight she has said shaped her childhood. She has spoken openly about being Jewish and about confronting prejudice in Hollywood, including being told she looked too Jewish for a certain period role. Her stage name, borrowed from a musician her father admired, is the main reason audiences rarely connect her to that heritage. She has remained candid about how much it means to her.